Welcome to Denoso Legends. Here, we step into the shadows of the ancient world to unravel the mysteries of world mythology, the hidden details of legendary lores, and the untold truths behind the stories that shaped human history. If you have a passion for history, classical literature, and decoding the secrets of timeless tales, join us on this journey. In the 8th century BCE, where the crashing, foam-crested waves of the Aegean Sea battered the rugged, sun-drenched cliffs of ancient Greece, a blind, legendary bard named Homer sang a masterpiece from the depths of his soul, an epic that would forever alter the landscape of world literature, the timeless and turbulent Odyssey. Greece at the time was plunging into a dark age, scarred by the devastating 10-year Trojan War, losing its cultural identity and facing societal collapse. Homer, who had previously championed the brutality of war, fierce rage, and blood-soaked blades in the Iliad through heroes like Achilles, chose a different path for the Odyssey. He sought to redefine heroism. This was not a hero born of slaughter and conquest, but a hero of survival, resilience, pure wisdom, cunning intellect, and absolute loyalty to home and family. Our story begins with Odysseus, the brilliant and thoughtful king of the island of Ithaca. His life was peaceful and sweet, but the distant drums of war called him away. Forced to leave behind his beloved wife Penelope and his newborn son Telemachus, he sailed with the kings of Greece to a monumental conflict. This sparked a 20-year saga of magic, terror, and the desperate struggle for survival. For 10 agonizing years, the Greek and Trojan armies bled beneath the towering, impenetrable walls of Troy. Neither side could grasp victory. Exhausted by the endless stalemate, Odysseus realized that walls could not be breached by brute force and cold steel alone. He turned instead to deception. He ordered the construction of a colossal, hollow wooden horse. The bravest Greek warriors concealed themselves inside its belly, while the rest of the army burned their camps and sailed away, feigning a total retreat. Believing the war was won, and the horse was a sacred offering to appease the gods, the Trojans joyfully dragged the monument inside their unbreakable gates. That night, as Troy slept in a deep, wine-induced slumber, Odysseus and his men crept from the belly of the horse, threw open the gates for the returning Greek fleet, and reduced the legendary city to ash and embers in a single night. The war was over, but for Odysseus, the tragedy was just beginning. With 12 ships laden with gold and battle-worn soldiers, Odysseus set sail for his homeland, Ithaca. But the capricious winds of the sea had other plans, dragging them to strange and uncharted shores. Their first true test came in the land of the Lotus Eaters. Odysseus sent a small scouting party into the island to search for food and water. The mysterious inhabitants offered the soldiers a magical plant, the lotus. It was a sweet, intoxicating trap. Anyone who tasted the plant instantly forgot their past, their memories, their wives, and their children. The burning desire to return home vanished, replaced by a hollow craving to stay on the island forever. When his men failed to return, Odysseus went looking for them, only to find his fierce warriors sitting in the dirt with hollow eyes and vacant smiles. Ignoring their tears and pleas to stay, Odysseus dragged them kicking and screaming back to the shore, bound them tightly to the ship's masts, and ordered an immediate departure before the rest of his crew could fall into that eternal waking sleep. After days of endless sailing, the fleet reached a lush yet eerie island. Driven by curiosity, Odysseus took 12 of his finest men and a wineskin of ancient, incredibly potent wine to explore. They stumbled upon a massive cavern brimming with baskets of rich cheese, bowls of milk, and pens of fat sheep. His men begged him to take the cheese and run, but Odysseus's fatal curiosity to see the cave's master altered their destinies forever. At dusk, the master returned. It was Polyphemus, a monstrous cyclops and a son of Poseidon, the god of the sea. He was a savage brute of a creature. He drove his flock inside and sealed the cavern with a colossal boulder, a stone so heavy that not even 20 teams of oxen could budge it. Upon noticing the intruders, his thunderous voice boomed, demanding to know who they were. Odysseus, speaking with utmost respect, replied that they were lost travelers from the Trojan War, asking for hospitality under the sacred laws of the gods. Polyphemus let out a cruel, mocking laugh, declaring that his kind feared no gods. Before their horrified eyes, the giant lunged forward, snatched 2 of the soldiers, and dashed their brains against the stone floor. He tore them limb from limb, devouring them alive, flesh, bones, and all. Then he stretched out across the cave and fell asleep. Odysseus drew his sword, ready to drive it into the giant's chest, but stopped. He realized that if he killed the monster, they would be buried alive, for none of them could move the massive boulder blocking the exit. They were forced to spend the night trembling in the dark. The next morning, the Cyclops awoke, swallowed 2 more soldiers for breakfast, drove his flock out, and sealed the cave once again. Left in the shadows, Odysseus forged a brilliant plan. He and his men took a massive log of olive tree found in the cave, sharpened its tip to a deadly point, and hid it beneath the embers to harden in the heat. When night fell, the giant returned and devoured 2 more men. This time, Odysseus stepped forward with cold composure, offering the heavy wine. Polyphemus, having never tasted such a heavenly nectar, drained 3 bowls in a row. As his eyes grew heavy, he asked, "What is your name, stranger? As a reward, I shall eat you last." Odysseus, with sharp wit, replied, "My name is Nobody. That is what everyone calls me." The giant laughed grossly. "Then Nobody I shall eat last," and crashed to the ground, sinking into a drunken stupor. Immediately, Odysseus and his men pulled the glowing hot steak from the embers, hoisted it with all their might, and drove it directly into Polyphemus's single eye. The sickening hiss of the burning eye and his blood-curdling shriek shook the cavern walls. Writhing in agony, Polyphemus ripped the steak from his face and roared for help, calling out to the other Cyclops living in nearby caves. They gathered outside the blocked entrance and shouted, "Polyphemus, who has wronged you that you scream so in the dead of night?" Polyphemus cried out from the depths of his soul, "Oh, my friends, nobody has blinded me. Nobody has plotted my ruin through treachery." The other giants called back, "Well, if nobody is harming you and you are alone, then this pain must be a plague sent by the gods, and there is nothing we can do." With that, they left him in the dark.
The next morning, the blinded monster sat at the cave's mouth, stretching his arms wide to catch any man trying to flee. He only allowed his sheep to pass. But Odysseus had outsmarted him again. He bound his remaining men under the bellies of the thick, woolly sheep. Odysseus himself clung to the underside of the largest, grandest ram of the flock. The giant stroked the backs of the sheep as they passed, but never felt the men hidden beneath. Thus, they escaped to their ships. However, as the boats pulled away, Odysseus's heroic pride got the better of him. He turned to the island and shouted, "Polyphemus, if anyone asks who blinded your eye, tell them it was Odysseus, king of Ithaca." Hearing the name, the furious Cyclops hurled a massive crag toward the voice, nearly crushing the ship. He then lifted his hands to the heavens and prayed to his father, Poseidon. "Hear me, Father. Grant that Odysseus may never reach his home. But if fate decrees that he must return, let him arrive late, broken, a broken wanderer on a foreign ship, having lost all his comrades to a house filled with havoc and grief." This dark curse cast a shadow over the sea, sealing the tragic fate of Odysseus's long journey home. In their relentless journey, they reached the floating island of Aeolia, governed by Aeolus, the master of the winds. He welcomed Odysseus with warm hospitality, and upon their departure, bestowed a priceless gift, a bag crafted from oxhide containing all the raging, tempestuous winds of the world, leaving out only the gentle west wind to guide the fleet straight to Ithaca. Aeolus gave a chilling warning: the bag must never be opened. For 9 days and nights they sailed smoothly, until the rugged, familiar coastlines of Ithaca finally emerged. They were so close they could see the hearth smoke rising from their homes. Exhausted from his 10-day vigil, Odysseus closed his heavy eyes and fell into a deep sleep. Seeing their captain asleep, his greedy crew glanced at the hide bag and whispered among themselves, "Surely Odysseus hides a fortune of gold and silver given by Aeolus, keeping it all for himself." They untied the knot. In a single, horrifying second, the wild, trapped storms burst forth with a thunderous roar. A violent tempest erupted, dragging the ships away from the shores of their homeland at a terrifying speed, casting them back into the vast, indifferent ocean. Odysseus awoke to total ruin. In his profound despair, he contemplated throwing himself into the dark waves, but he endured. They returned to Aeolus, but the Wind King drove them away in fury, shouting, "Begone! You are cursed by the immortal gods!" The weary fleet sailed on, soon arriving at the shores of Telepilos, the land of the Laestrygonians, a tribe of monstrous, cannibalistic giants. Sensing danger, Odysseus cautiously moored his lone ship outside the natural harbor at the mouth of the sea, while the other 11 ships anchored deep within the narrow bay. Suddenly, the Laestrygonian giants climbed the towering cliffs and began hurling colossal boulders, each weighing several tons, down onto the trapped fleet. The ships splintered and shattered into kindling. The monsters speared the drowning soldiers like fish, carrying them off to be eaten alive. Only Odysseus and the men on his single ship managed to slash their mooring ropes and flee the horrific massacre. Out of 12 grand ships, only one remained. The solitary ship eventually made landfall on the island of Io, the domain of Circe, the dread goddess of magic and daughter of the sun god. Odysseus divided his remaining crew, sending half under the command of Eurylochus, his trusted second-in-command, to scout the island. Deep in the woods, they stumbled upon a magnificent palace surrounded by prowling wolves and lions, strangely tame as if under a spell. Circe emerged with a deceptive, enchanting smile, inviting them inside. She served them a sumptuous feast laced with a wicked potion. The moment they ate, Circe waved her twisted wand, and the fierce warriors were instantly transformed into squealing swine, though their human minds remained trapped inside their beastly bodies. She drove them into the styes, tossing them acorns. Eurylochus, who had stayed outside due to growing suspicion, ran back to the ship in absolute terror to recount the horror. Odysseus immediately drew his sword to save his men. On his way to the palace, Hermes, the swift messenger god,
appeared to him disguised as a beautiful young man. Hermes warned him that human strength was useless against Circe's witchcraft, unless he used a mystical black-rooted herb with milk-white petals called moly. Delivering the antidote, Hermes instructed, "When Circe strikes you with her wand, draw your sharp blade and rush her as if to kill her." Odysseus followed the god's guidance perfectly. When Circe realized her magic was powerless against him and felt the cold edge of his sword pressed against her throat, terror struck her heart. She recognized him as the legendary wise hero foretold in ancient prophecies. She quickly reversed the spell, turning his crew back into men, and hosted them with grand hospitality for an entire year. After a year, when Odysseus longed to resume his voyage, Circe delivered a grim decree. To find his way home, he must first endure a nightmare journey to the underworld, the realm of the dead, to consult the spirit of Tiresias, the blind prophet. Odysseus sailed to the literal edge of the world where the sun never shines, dug a deep trench, and poured the blood of black sheep into it to summon the restless dead. Out of the shifting shadows, the ghosts of the departed surged forward. Among them, he saw the weeping spirit of his own mother, who had died of a broken heart waiting for his return. He also encountered Achilles, the greatest Greek warrior of the Trojan War. Achilles, who in life had been consumed by a hunger for eternal glory, looked at Odysseus with hollow eyes and said, "I would rather be a poor, nameless serf on the earth, serving a landless master, than to rule as king over all the dead in this dark underworld." This bittersweet truth was a profound lesson for Odysseus. Finally, the ghost of Tiresias approached, drinking the blood, and delivered a stark, vital warning. "On the road ahead, whatever happens, your men must not harm the sacred cattle of the sun god, or your destiny will be completely destroyed." Leaving the world of the dead behind, they cut through the waves once more. Their first peril lay ahead: the sirens, monstrous creatures, half woman and half bird, whose enchanting songs possessed a fatal magic. Their melodies were so intoxicatingly beautiful that any sailor who heard them would lose his mind, steering his vessel into the jagged rocks to a watery grave. Following Circe's counsel, Odysseus kneaded beeswax and sealed the ears of all his men, rendering them deaf to the world. Yet, driven by a deep desire to hear this legendary song, he ordered his men to bind him tightly to the ship's mast. He commanded them that no matter how much he begged or wept, they must only bind the ropes tighter.
As they neared the sunlit cliffs, the piercingly beautiful song of the sirens drifted across the water. They called to Odysseus by name, promising him absolute wisdom and cosmic secrets. Overwhelmed by ecstasy and longing, Odysseus shrieked and strained against his bonds, nodding frantically for his men to free him. But the crew, hearing nothing but the silence of the sea, stepped forward and bound the ropes tighter still, rowing hard until the danger faded into the distance. Next, they had to navigate a terrifyingly narrow strait bordered by twin horrors. On one high cliff lurked Scylla, a hideous six-headed monster with rows of razor-sharp fangs. On the opposite side lay Charybdis, a deadly churning whirlpool that swallowed the sea and spat it back out. To approach Charybdis meant total annihilation for the entire ship. Thus, Odysseus made the harrowing choice to hug the cliff of Scylla.
As the ship glided through the shadows, Scylla's 6 long serpentine necks shot down from the rocks. She snatched 6 of Odysseus's finest warriors straight off the deck, devouring them alive high above the waves. Helpless and hollowed by grief, Odysseus could only watch as he urged the remaining crew to row past the gauntlet of death. Eventually, the battered ship made landfall on Thrinacia, the sacred island of Helios, the sun god, where his holy cattle grazed. Treacherous headwind locked them on the island for a full month, and their provisions dwindled to nothing. One afternoon, Odysseus ventured deep into the island alone to pray to the gods for deliverance, but exhausted by sorrow, he fell into a deep sleep. Left to themselves, the starving soldiers, led by the mutinous Eurylochus, defied the warnings of their captain and Tiresias. To die of hunger, Eurylochus argued, is the most wretched death of all. They slaughtered the fattest, sacred cattle of the sun god and roasted them over the fire. When Odysseus awoke and caught the scent of burning fat, he struck his head in sheer horror. Helios appealed to Zeus for vengeance, demanding retribution. The moment the ship ventured back onto the open sea, Zeus unleashed a monstrous tempest and hurled a blinding thunderbolt directly into the heart of the vessel. The ship shattered into kindling. All of Odysseus's remaining comrades were swallowed by the roaring waves, drowning in the abyss. Only Odysseus managed to seize a piece of the broken mast, drifting half-dead through the open sea for 9 grueling days. Odysseus washed ashore on the secluded island of Ogygia, the domain of the nymph Calypso, daughter of the Titan Atlas. Deeply moved by the tragic tale of this battered hero, Calypso fell madly in love with him and kept him captive on her island for 7 long years. She offered him a dazzling bargain. If he stayed with her, she would grant him ageless immortality and a life of divine luxury. Yet every single day, Odysseus would sit upon the jagged rocks of the shore, staring out at the barren sea, weeping for Penelope and his rugged homeland. For him, a genuine mortal life shared with his family held far more value than the hollow immortality of the gods. Saddened by the hero's endless grief, Athena pleaded his case before the Council of Olympus, begging Zeus to grant him passage home. Zeus relented, dispatching Hermes to deliver the decree of release to Calypso. Heartbroken, the nymph yielded and aided Odysseus in building a wooden raft. Odysseus set sail into the open waters, but Poseidon, spotting his hated enemy on the waves, struck the sea with his trident. A monstrous tempest shattered the small raft into splinters. Naked and battered by the surf, Odysseus barely managed to swim ashore on the prosperous island of Scheria, the land of the Phaeacians.
There, Nausicaa, the young princess and daughter of King Alcinous, found him while washing linens by the shore. She clothed him and guided him to her father's court. The hospitable King Alcinous welcomed the scarred stranger with a grand feast. During the banquet, a bard began to sing of the Trojan War and the cunning trick of the wooden horse. Hearing the song of his past, Odysseus could not contain his tears. He revealed his true identity and recounted the entire 10-year saga of his wandering. Spellbound by his courage and wisdom, the Phaeacians showered him with rich gifts and placed him aboard one of their magically swift ships. During the voyage, a profound, peaceful sleep overcame Odysseus. As he slept, the Phaeacian mariners gently carried him ashore, laying the weary king and his treasures onto the misty, fog-shrouded coast of Ithaca. At long last, he was home. After 20 years of wandering, Odysseus finally set foot on his native soil. But Ithaca was no longer the peaceful haven he once knew. His royal palace had been overrun by more than 100 treacherous, power-hungry suitors. Presuming the king dead, they were plundering his estate,
slaughtering his livestock, draining his wine cellars, and aggressively pressuring his wife Penelope to choose one of them as her new husband. To safeguard his life, Athena transformed his appearance, turning him into a withered, frail old beggar in tattered rags. In this disguise, Odysseus first made his way to the humble hut of Eumaeus, his loyal swineherd and old servant. Eumaeus, without recognizing his king, welcomed him with deep kindness. At that very moment, his son, Telemachus, who had traveled far in search of news about his father, returned to the hut. Inside the cabin, Athena momentarily restored Odysseus to his true form. Father and son recognized each other after 2 decades, embraced through tears, and forged a secret plot to annihilate the suitors. Telemachus returned to the palace, and Odysseus followed behind, once again cloaked as a beggar. When Odysseus stepped into the palace courtyard in his beggar's guise, no human recognized him, but someone did. Argus, his loyal ancient hound. This dog had waited 20 long years for his master's return. Now, weak, neglected, and forgotten, he lay upon a pile of dung. The moment Argus caught sight of Odysseus, his ears flattened, he feebly wagged his tail, and looking into his master's eyes, he drew his final breath, dying of sheer joy. Odysseus secretly wiped away a tear and entered the grand hall. The arrogant suitors began to mock him. Antinous, their cruel and insolent leader, even hurled a footstool at Odysseus, striking his shoulder. But the king forced his boiling rage down. That night, Penelope spoke with the old beggar, hoping for news of her long-lost husband. She ordered Euryclea, the faithful nurse who had raised Odysseus from infancy, to wash the stranger's feet. As the old woman bathed him, her fingers grazed a distinctive ancient scar on his leg, left by a wild boar during his youth. Euryclea gasped through tears, "You are Odysseus!" But the king instantly covered her mouth, urging her to remain silent so as not to ruin the trap. The next day, having run out of ways to delay the marriage, Penelope was guided by Athena to arrange an impossible contest. She brought out Odysseus's heavy, ancient bow and announced, "I will marry the man who can string this bow and shoot an arrow through the sockets of 12 axes lined up in a row." One by one, the arrogant suitors stepped forward. They greased their arms and warmed the bow over the fire, but the wood was so stiff that not a single man could bend it even a fraction to loop the string. They all failed in utter humiliation. Then Odysseus stepped forward in his beggar's rags, asking for a turn. The suitors erupted in anger and mockery, but Telemachus intervened, commanding that the bow be handed to the old man. Odysseus took the weapon, checking it carefully for damage. Then, as effortlessly as a master musician tuning the strings of a lyre, he bent the massive bow and slipped the string into place. A deathly silence fell over the hall. He notched an arrow, took aim, and the arrow hissed sharply through the air, piercing the center of all 12 axe sockets perfectly. In a flash, Athena's illusion vanished, and the rags fell away. Odysseus stood tall, his eyes blazing with fury upon the threshold. Telemachus and the loyal Eumaeus instantly slammed the heavy doors shut and barred them with chains. There was no escape. Odysseus roared, "You dogs! You thought I would never return! You plundered my house and dishonored my wife! Now your hour of death has come!" His first arrow tore through the throat of the arrogant Antinous. What followed was an absolute bloodbath. Odysseus and his son fell upon the trapped suitors with swords and bows. Caught completely off guard, the suitors tried to defend themselves with tables and chairs, but Odysseus's arrows pierced chest after chest. The royal hall ran red with blood, and after hours of fierce combat, every single invader met his grim fate. The palace was cleansed. After the slaughter, the old nurse rushed to Penelope's chambers with the miraculous news. Penelope came down, her heart torn between hope and deep suspicion. She had endured 20 years of absence and knew that a clever god might be wearing her husband's face to deceive her. She decided to test him. Penelope turned to the nurse and said, "Bring out our royal bed from our private bridal chamber so this stranger may rest upon it." Hearing this, Odysseus grew agitated. "Woman," he cried, "who could possibly move my bed? No mortal has such power. I built that bed with my own hands. Its post is the trunk of a living, ancient olive tree, deeply rooted in the earth, around which I constructed our entire chamber and built the roof. No one can move that bed without cutting the very roots of the tree." This hidden secret belonged only to Odysseus and Penelope. No other living soul knew of it. Hearing these exact details, the last wall of doubt in Penelope's heart crumbled. Weeping, she threw her arms around her husband, and after 20 years of agony and separation, the king and queen were finally reunited in peace. The following day, the armed relatives of the slain suitors marched furiously toward the palace, seeking blood vengeance. Odysseus, alongside his aged father, Laertes, and Telemachus, donned his armor, ready for war. The first blades clashed, but before a devastating civil war could destroy Ithaca, the heavens tore open. Athena descended between the two opposing forces. Her thunderous voice echoed across the fields. "Men of Ithaca, halt this bloody strife and shed no more of each other's blood. Let peace cover this land." Zeus hurled a thunderbolt at Athena's feet, sealing her command. Odysseus curbed his anger and sheathed his sword, and his enemies bowed in submission. A lasting covenant of peace was struck between the king and his people. Under the shade of the ancient olive tree, Odysseus began his calm and just reign. The long voyage was over, and the hero had finally returned to his home, his true identity, and his humanity.
The story of the Odyssey ultimately concludes with peace and a return to one's roots, a narrative that reminds us that man's greatest victory is not the destruction of kingdoms, but the return to his true self and home. Thank you so much for journeying with us until the very end of this voyage. If you enjoyed this tale, please like the video and subscribe to Dinoso Legends. We will return later with another video from the mysterious world of myths and legends, exploring more timeless secrets of the ancient world. Leave your thoughts on this epic in the comments below. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Until our next story, farewell.